Hello, 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 everybody, all you beautiful people of the world. It is I, Sam, and the lovely
Bria, I'm back,
Bria,
guys.
that gal, yeah. So today, we are going to be talking about and first of all, thank you everyone for tuning in, whoever's tuning in. We are going to be talking about our experience growing up as a West Indian child, I guess, coming from a childhood, from being a child of the West Indies to Canada, immigrating here, what our experiences were like, what our family dynamics were like, and so forth. So hopefully we'll have a couple stories to make you chuckle. And let's get started, I guess. So you want to start first, Ria, because you're from Trinidad. You're from the island.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it. So I was born in Trinidad. A lot of people, when they hear my phone voice, they're like, oh, no, she's not from the West Indies. But I am from Trinidad. I do have an accent.
I get
You
that
just
all the
don't
time.
hear it. You just don't hear it as much when I'm out and about. I was about, I think, turning 5 when we migrated to Canada. And our migration story was kind of by happen chance. My mom was working at an insurance company. She used to go to Barbados a lot for work. And then her boss basically gave her this form and said, hey, I don't know if you and your family were ever thinking of migrating, but they've opened it up now with less, I guess, not security checks, but less checks. It was less of an issue. So my mom
No
came
visa?
home.
Did you guys need a visa to come to Canada?
I don't remember, but I remember it was like at that time that they had given it to my mom, it was like easier and a lot of people were migrating.
Right.
So she brought home the form and told my dad about it. And my dad was kind of like, yeah, we can fill it out and see what happens. But they didn't think, oh my God, we're going to get through. Within 3 months, they got a letter stating that they have a few months to pack up, sell, and get on a plane and come to Canada.
Oh yeah.
So it was really quick. And as a kid, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's an adventure. I've never been on a plane. Like, oh, okay, whatever, whatever. And we landed, and it was just the first time ever seeing snow was,
So
I was
you
like,
came in the
oh.
winter.
No, we came in the summer. So we came August, September-ish. So I and my brother went to Texas with my grandma, my mom's mom. We stayed there for 6 weeks while my parents came here and settled and got an apartment and whatever. And then my grandma flew over to Toronto with me and my brother. So it was like summer starting of fall. So that December, I remember, was like looking out the window. We lived in an attic, and looking out the window, seeing this white stuff falling, and we were so excited, like, snow, snow, this is snow. And we don't even know what snow is, but we were so excited. And so I used to live near Dufferin Mall on Gladstone. So we lived, there's like an attic and then the main floor and then like the basement. We had the whole house to ourselves when we first got here. And then other family members wanted to migrate. So they just came and stayed at our place and we were pushed up to the attic. Yeah,
Okay.
it was really bad. Like it was just annoying because some of the ways they treated us after my dad helped them was like kind of but whatever, that's in the past. But
That's a
yeah, we
different
lived in an
story.
attic. Huh?
That's a different story. That's a different topic altogether.
Different topic altogether. So we migrated. Our first time seeing snow was hilarious because we didn't understand it, but it was snow, it was falling, it was, oh, Santa Claus, all that. Yeah, and so we lived in Dufferin for like a good, well, in that area for like almost a year and a half, I believe. Because I actually, funnily enough, my mom, um, she enrolled me in French immersion at a school called Regal Road Public in Toronto. So
Okay.
I used to get bused there.
Did
So
she
that
have
was
to
my
pay for bus?
first.
Because I have a whole experience with putting my daughter, my eldest, in French immersion and having to bus. I had to pay separate for the bus.
I believe my mom did because at the time I was too young to be put in the same school as my brother for elementary.
Yeah.
And my mom and my dad had both gotten jobs. So my mom was like, where can I put this kid? Right. And this like French immersion school had like a kindergarten where they would take kids my age. So and then she also thought it's Canada. She's going to learn French. It's her second language. Like, it'll help her, right? So yeah, at a young age, I was learning French, basic French, and yeah.
So I
So,
came here too almost when I was 7, and I came in the summer. I first of all was told I'm going to visit my mom. I wasn't told I was coming to live here. I was told I was coming to visit. When I got here, I was told I'm staying. But I was excited because when I was back home, a lot of my friends in the neighborhood had come to Canada, had gone to the US, had experienced snow and Halloween. So they used to come back and tell me all these things. Oh my God, the snow is great and all this stuff. It wasn't at first. And the thing I was most excited about was the Halloween part, because they're like explaining how you had to dress up, put on masks, put on costumes and all this stuff. So I was interested in that. When I came at the very beginning, my parents took me everywhere. Now, it was me and my sister at the time. My sister had come when she was 2 years old with my mom. So I stayed back, and my grandmother was raising me while my mom was up here. And so when I come, everything, I didn't really know my mom. I didn't know my stepdad. Like, I knew them, but I didn't know them. And like, my grandmother was my mummy back then, called her granny, but she was my mom. And so I was excited to see all the new places. We went to Ontario Place and the zoo and all these places, African Lion Safari, and like, they took us to different like traveler scenes. What are they called?
Like interaction, different
actions, right?
Yeah.
And so I was liking it. And then I had to start school. I was at first excited to start school, but then the part for me that wasn't fun was the kids made fun of how I spoke. They were making fun of how I pronounce things. And I used to be a talkative kid, and then I kind of sort of retracted, didn't speak much and all that stuff. So when I first landed, my parents were living in Toronto, down at Keele and Shepherd. So I don't know if you know about the Dells. That was one of our favorite places to go and picnic, fly kites, because we used to fly kites back home. It was a thing that people did. And so we used to go picnic down there. So I was actually liking it until winter hit. I was excited to see the snow, but then I didn't think the snow would be so cold. Yeah. And as much as I wanted to play in the snow, I didn't want to be out in the snow. So it was a love-hate relationship with the snow from the time I stepped foot in Canada, from the first snowfall. And then the year that I came, it had like the worst snowfall ever. And so cars were stuck on Shepherd Avenue, couldn't drive. Nobody could get out of their driveways, apartments, or anything like that. It was just too much. Do you remember that time I think it was like 1999, when they had that big snowfall and Mel Lastman called in the
the freak snowstorm. That. Yeah.
It was like that. So I didn't know much about Canada life, and
me either.
The school that I went to, I didn't like my first teacher. Not a nice person. As much as the kids made fun of me, she was not helpful in the situation. And as a little kid, you can't really tell your mom too much and tell your parents too much about how you feel, because and you're talking about West Indian kids, so parents, they were strict. They wanted you, I was told, I remember being told, I'm in Canada now, I have to speak like Canadians. So I was constantly, almost on a daily basis, they had to teach me how to pronounce words properly and so forth. So I kind of started resenting coming to Canada. And then when my grandmother had to leave, it was a whole other story, because I was crying. I didn't want her to go. I tried to hop back on the plane with her. I just did not want to stay here. But eventually I got used to it.
Yeah,
So,
so I had similar experience with the way I spoke. So after living in Toronto, we moved to Mississauga. My dad got a townhome, North Service area, and I started to go to public school there. And I remember for the first 6 months, I was in regular classes and whatever. And because I spoke so fast and spoke with this accent, sometimes the teachers couldn't understand what I was
understand you.
saying.
Yep.
I was picked on a lot. And then they threw me in ESL class.
Me too.
And for like the last 6 months of that school year, I would go to like the hour a day to this ESL class. And at one point, the ESL teacher put like a tiny, tiny cinder block and made me shove it to the back of my mouth
What?
so that when I spoke, I would open my mouth and pronounce the words.
Hmm.
They thought that was going to help. It didn't help because I still came out of that speaking fast, speaking with a little bit of an accent, but now even more angrier, right? Like as
Yeah,
a kid, I'm like pissed, like what the
you're
heck?
annoyed with what's going on.
And then as you said, like I didn't feel like I could go to my parents because I okay, just going to touch on a topic quickly before I go into why I felt like I couldn't go to them. While we were in Toronto, we had a babysitter. And I suffered a traumatic experience there. So I think my parents knew, but they didn't know how to handle the situation. Completely out, like they never ever heard of this kind of stuff. So to me, I feel like it was swept under the rug because I didn't know what they were doing behind the scenes at the time as a child. I didn't understand, right?
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, we're uprooted again. We're moved to Mississauga. And then I'm at this school. They're putting me in ESL. When my mom found out the next year, she told them that I don't need to be in ESL. I speak English. It's just I'm speaking very fast. So
You're
then,
speaking a different dialect of English.
yeah. So I didn't feel like I could go to them because I thought, okay, another problem. And then they're going to be mad at me, right? Like you're a kid, you don't think
Yep.
things through. And then also, my mom was so focused on not as a child, but when we got into our teen years, my mom was so focused on you need to speak more Canadian. You need to speak more Canadian.
Yeah,
Stop talking like this. Stop. And to
I
me,
got
as a
that a lot.
teenager, yeah, I couldn't understand. This is where you come from. This is where we grew. We used to go back to Trinidad every summer because we don't have babysitters. We don't have this, or our grandparents would come here. So
Hmm.
we're around the family. We're speaking like that to them. It's normal, it's natural. And then as teenagers, you want us to stop this whole thing completely.
See, you got to go back. My parents did not send me back. Um,
Mm,
I have suspicions why, and I don't think it had anything to do with money, although money
mm,
may have been a factor. But I think that with my parents, they were my first of all, my parents were young parents. Like my mom had me when she was 18,
oh,
and
wow.
so when I came to Canada, she was in her 20s. But I think like there's a lot of feelings I have about the way my parents raised me, right? And everything's done. I'm adult now. All is forgiven. As far as I can see, I can understand where they were coming from some points, but then in some of my growing up, maturing, I really had a hard uh, a hard time letting go of the things that were done to me, and you too. I had a traumatic experience as well, and I really think that when I came here, uh, the only fun things that I remember were when it was like, I think my parents really wanted us to experience Canada for what it was, right? So I give them that. We used to go camping. We did a lot of summer trips. I
Hmm.
think that's because they wanted us to experience Canada. I remember the time that I was told I was going to become a Canadian. I was like 12 and I cried. My mother told me I was no longer going to be a Bajan, and I cried and I said I don't want to. I wasn't going to
Oh my
go
God.
because they were going to the classes or they were doing whatever it took to become Canadian citizens.
Yeah.
And so they passed that. And I guess because we were underage, we didn't have to take the tests or anything like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
my sister, although she grew up here from the age of 2, she was basically a Canadian because she's been here all that time, right? I on top of having a good memory, I didn't want to let go of who I was and where I came from.
Same here. As a teenager, I was struggling with that.
And
You're lucky on in one aspect. When you came here, your parents took you everywhere and took you to see all the things. My parents, well, we didn't have a penny to make a fire,
mhm.
so we really didn't go anywhere. And I could tell you, I always remember this. And like sometimes as a teenager, if I got upset with my parents or yelled at them, I would be in my room and then I would think about this and it would like make me cry because I remember my parents tried so hard. We lived in this attic and my parents didn't have a bedroom to themselves. They gave us the bedroom. And we had like these rickety bunk bed type situation.
Yeah.
And my parents wanted to provide Christmas for us. And me and my brother were like so happy for snow and so happy for all this things, you know.
Mhm.
And while we were asleep, my parents took, you remember those like yellow mall bags from like Duffer Mall, like the grocery bags? They took 2 of those yellow bags, hung them on our bunk
It's,
bed, the railings, one on top and one on the bottom for me. And they had bought toys for us.
and they put them in there.
And they put them in there. And I remember when we woke up the next morning, my mom was like roasting pumpkin seeds. I never roast pumpkin seeds in Trinidad in my life. Talk about roast pumpkin seeds. And so I'm like smelling this thing and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? It smells kind of nice. And as a kid, you're just so excited. So we woke up and my dad was like in the kitchen with her. And we woke up, we ran to the kitchen because we didn't even see the bags. We were like, oh, we're smelling something good to eat. So then my dad is there with her in the kitchen and he goes, oh, you guys didn't see what Santa left you guys? And we're like, what are you talking about? And then my dad was like, go back to the room. And then he came with us and we saw these bags hanging on the posts. And man, when I tell you the feeling as a kid, like, oh, we got gifts too, like we got something, oh my God. So like after that, whenever like I would get upset at my parents, it would like remembering that would affect me and it would trigger like the sadness in me, like, oh my God, I was so mean to her and look what they went
Yeah.
through for us type of thing. But I didn't get to go to like Wonderland and African Lion Safari until I was like much older, like 12, between 12 and 14 was when I started to see those things.
Well, Wonderland wasn't built until I was basically about to enter high school here.
Mhm.
So, tale tells of how old I am. But I remember my first Christmas here. That was probably, I think, the most excited I've ever been about Christmas because back home, Christmas was my grandmother cooked like nonstop, baked everything under the sun, cooked every food. Um,
Mhm.
there was, and you know what? It's so funny because I didn't know that we were poor because I had so much when I was
Back home.
home. I did. And when we came to Canada, I don't think that we were poor, but my parents were hardworking. You know, they worked in a factory, middle class workers, whatever. And
Mhm.
like I said, I think they tried to provide as much as they could for us because they didn't have um, that kind of stuff back home.
That's right.
And so, yes, I was lucky. I did get to see a lot of things and do a lot of things. And I think one of the things my stepdad and his sister, who we were living very close with at the time, they really wanted us kids to experience all of this stuff. So
Yeah.
they always had plans for us, like swimming, skating, doing everything that Canadian people did, just so we can get uh, I want to say incorporate. We could I think they were conforming us.
Yeah, they want to
The
show you what
Canadian
their
life,
life
right?
is about, and they want it to teach you so that you can learn, and maybe if you like it, you know it'll.
Yeah, it got better over the years when it came to school and stuff. But I remember my first Christmas. My grandmother was here, and I think I've only had ever little baby dolls like this big back home, and I got a walking doll. So she was nearly almost the same height as me. She's probably like 2 heads smaller than me, but she was pretty tall. She was a stand-up walking doll, and my grandmother had made matching clothes for the doll and me, and a few extra clothes for the
Oh,
doll. And I got like Fisher Price toys. They were the best at the time, you know. They were always like the number one toy to get. So I got a lot of presents, which was a surprise to me because mostly back home I would get 1 or 2 presents, but it would always be food was a thing, right?
yes, yes.
Food was a thing for Christmas. And like I'd help my grandmother bake back home, and you know, I get to lick the bowl out, I get to eat the
Mhm.
coconut as she making coconut bread and all that stuff. So the first Christmas here, although it wasn't the same as what I remember back home, we got a nice green tree instead of a fake.
Mm.
I think the tree was fake here too, but it was green instead of white. We had a white tree back home with lights and
Yeah,
stuff. And it was quite the experience for me. I can remember that is one of the things I remember most. You always remember the great things that made you feel good. And that's one of my best memories about the things when I first came to Canada with the toys that I got.
yeah.
And I used to watch my mom type. I wanted a typewriter. I think the next year I got a little Fisher Price typewriter with a real ribbon, and my mom taught me how to type. And I was like, what, 8 years old, 9 years old at the
Oh.
time. And and then I asked for a guitar. I got a guitar. Well, I kind of lied for the guitar. So I had a teacher who used to play folk songs in the class. And I don't know what it was about this teacher, but she just made me feel good. Music was something that I just started to love. My uncle, my mom's younger brother, he used to hang around the Merry Men. You know who the Merry Men are? In
No.
Barbados.
Oh,
So soca group.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he used to hang around them sometimes, and so
Oh.
my uncle used to play guitar. Like people had, you know, fun back home, and so music. When I saw the teacher playing the guitar, it reminded me of what used to happen when my uncles came home. There used to be a party. I mean,
You.
I was little. There's a lot of things I probably shouldn't see at the time, but I remember the fun parts of those, right? So I
Mhm.
lied. I said the teacher told me she would teach me guitar lessons if I had a guitar. So my parents went out,
Mm.
took my word for it, went out, bought a guitar. My cousin ratted me out
Oh.
because she went to the teacher and she said she was in my class and she said to the teachers, I told my parents this, and my teacher is like, no, but you know what? If you guys want to learn guitar lessons, I will teach you. So my cousin got a guitar, I got a guitar, a few other kids got a guitar, and the teacher started teaching us guitar lessons after school. This was on her own, right? This is how
That's
good
so
this
nice.
teacher was. And then the following year, I like this teacher, I wanted her for my teacher again because it was one of those, you know, I don't know if you know what Shepherd Avenue School is, but so my cousin got her and I didn't, and I was crying and bawling. I'm like, I want Mrs. Swartz for a teacher because she's teaching me guitar lessons and she's my favorite teacher. I did not want any other teacher but her.
Right,
And
right.
so she felt bad, and she went through all this work with the principal to get me into her class for the next year.
Oh,
And I find out we're moving to Newmarket.
dude,
It was a
I would have been
when my
so
parents told me
sad.
we were moving, I was even more upset. I did not want to move. I did not want to lose out on having that teacher because I just come to Canada. I've just started experiencing life in Toronto, and I didn't like Toronto, to be honest with you, as much as I had a lot of fun times. Uh, but yeah, when we moved to Newmarket now is a whole other story because we moved into a town. Toronto was very multicultural. There was Koreans, there were Indians,
Yes.
there was West Indians, all sorts, Trinidad, Guyanese, Grenadians, St. Vincent, Jamaicans, Barbadian, everyone, right? And
Mm.
so when I moved to Newmarket now, and I was never aware, and I got to tell, and people say, how could you not be aware? But it never crossed my mind that I was different, that I was a different skin color. It never crossed my mind of my difference to anybody else. Yeah, people were people. You know what I mean?
You want to know why?
Because
It,
I was a child.
not only
I
were
was
you a
happy.
child, but growing up in the West Indies, it's so multicultural.
Yeah,
You meet
true.
people of all walks, and you don't, in the West Indies, you do
They
not
don't
look
just
at each other as different.
no.
You're
They
just,
don't.
yeah, if you grow up in Barbados and you see a Chinese man, oh, he from Barbados. Okay, if you grow up in Tobago and you see a German, oh, he grew up Tobago, he's Tobagonian, right? Like there was never, oh, that guy's white. No, you can't go. My mom, her street in Trinidad, it's like Streatham Lodge. And my mom grew up very strict Hindu. And their neighbor, Mr. Willie, was like they were black people, African people.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's mom was a single mom raising 6 kids because my nana died very young. They had such a good relationship with Mr. Willie and his family, and Mr. Willie and his family just was a little bit more they had a little bit more money. So they would take my grandma's kids whenever they were going to the beach or to wherever. They would
Yeah.
take my mom and her sisters and brothers to the beach with them. They, and my grandma had a business to run. So sometimes she couldn't go along. And
Mm-hmm.
the trust that they had, no matter who you were,
That's the
you
other
know,
thing too. Yeah.
they were like your children. Whoever you're taking with you,
Well,
those
the
are your
neighborhood
children.
kids. Yeah. My grandmother used to feed so many children in our neighborhood back home. Um, it wasn't funny. If people were hungry and they needed food, they come to my house. I remember
Oh,
my house back home. We had so many kids in the car park playing, and sometimes, like my grandmother's boyfriend at the time, he would bring home like a case of. This is. I was spoiled back there. I'll tell you. We were not rich, but I was spoiled. He would always bring a case of mangoes and he put it down on the
mm,
table. And those mangoes were for me. Nobody else could touch them. Nobody
mm.
else could touch those mangoes. Those mangoes were for me. He'd bring home like there's dunk trees all over. I don't know if you know what Dunk's plum is, but
Yeah,
Dunk's
yeah.
trees. And he would have somebody pick the dunks for me and bring them home. Like anything he brought home was for me first. And I did have my cousins living with me as well. I had a older cousin, which I just reunited with this year, just before
Oh.
Christmas. Had not seen or heard from her since she left Barbados as a child, and
Mm.
she left just before I came to Canada, and I couldn't reconnected with her, and you know what? When she speaks, because she's a Vincentian and my grandmother's a Vincentian, and she sounds just like my grandmother. So I just am in awe. I'm just sitting there listening to her talk, and I'm just like remembering the old days of when, I used to walk to school with her, and she used to, be with her friends and so forth. So yeah, I remember I had great times back home in Barbados. I can never forget the good times I had back there and the times that I had here. I remember learning not just how to speak properly, but then the terms that people use. I remember
Oh
when I
my gosh.
first moved to Newmarket, kids, the language that they use, I had to try to figure out. I felt stupid trying to ask, what does this mean? Like, I remember, what do you mean a whole pile of people? Like I'm picturing in my mind people piling up on top of each other
Mm.
when they say, let's get a whole pile of people together and do this. And I'm like, what do you mean a whole pile of people? Like, when you pile them up, how are they going to do this? You know, this is me
You know,
being naive.
you know what was the one word that got me in trouble, but I was so curious about the one word. I remember when we moved from Dufferin to Mississauga, and I started full on public elementary school. This one word, the F word.
Really?
I had never heard that word in my life until I came to Mississauga and I started to go to an elementary public school. We were on the playground like the second day of school. And I remember my mom and my dad dropped me off at the door that I'm supposed to line up at. And the kids are milling around playing, whatever. And this kid was like,
F-bombs
yeah,
all over the
yeah.
place.
And I'm like, what is that? Like, what does that mean? So then I was really quiet as a kid, right? So I didn't really say anything. And then my mom, she came to pick us up after school and walk us home. And I remember, I'm like, Mom, what? And then I said it. And then she's like, oh my God, you don't say them kind of thing. And da 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 da. Don't go in the house and say that your father will give a lick. And I was like, what does it mean? She's like, it's a bad word. You never use that word. And it was like so funny. Like I could, and then I remember when my
I caught on
grandparents.
with the bad words though. I was around people growing up that used to cuss, but instead of saying the F word here, we used to say frig, and the mutta, that one. So when people were swearing, I kind of clicked in on what the words meant in the way that they were saying them. But it was those other words. It was like innocent words that I just there's so many different words. I should have wrote down a handful of them to say them. But like I had to ask people, what does this mean? And I felt stupid asking, what does this mean? Because now I'm speaking better English, right? I know I'm pretty much lost my accent now that I'm in like the fourth grade in the fourth grade, I think, because when I came to New York, it was fourth grade. But I still couldn't understand their lingo. And I had a hard time, but also the teacher, I think the teacher used to give me a hard time too. I had a teacher that failed me. And now I can't blame it all on her, because when she started giving me a hard time, I shut down. I stopped doing work.
I can imagine.
Shut down and I was like, I did not want to talk. I did not want to present. I didn't want to do anything. And then the next year I got this, well, actually I went to summer school and I got a really lovely teacher, Mrs. McDonald. I'll never forget her. And I know her daughter, and her daughter used to babysit for another family friend and so forth. But Mrs. McDonald was the teacher that made me think that that teacher was just an asshole, and not everybody is like her. And I do, after like looking back on it, I think that teacher was prejudiced or racist in some way. And I ended up going to school with her daughter later on in when we moved to Sharon. So, but yeah, and then I got a really lovely teacher who treated me great. And I think, one of the things with me, I think that, so when I used to read, I still used to pronounce words different to how I saw them.
Right.
Now, I don't think it was dyslexia, because I knew the word, I knew what the letters were. It was just, I was trying to translate, and it's the same thing for me in French. I was trying to translate what it was to come out of my mouth. And so that's the hard time I had. And then I got they put me in a group of kids with the principal, the principal of the school. Wow. And by the way, this is Meadowbrook Public School, and this is the same school that Tyler Stewart, the drummer from Bare Naked Ladies, he was in that school. He was a grade ahead of me. And that's the first time I used to saw him all the time, beating his drumsticks, going through the hallways and everything. I'm like, who is this kid, But anyways, so yeah, the principal sat down with a group of us kids, and instead of like teaching us and stuff, you know what he did? He got us to read a book. And that book to this day is in the library at Meadowbrook Public School. We wrote a little book. It was like, I think like for half the semester of the school, we were with him, and we wrote, I can't even remember all the kids that were with him, but we wrote a book. We signed it. He printed it out, and it was in the library at that school. So that's a cool experience. I would go back and look for that book, but I never really did. I don't even remember the name of the book. We did get a copy to take home, but I don't know what happened to it.
That's a cool experience. I remember some of my experiences, like things like I learned the funny things that I learned coming to Canada, like telling fibs. So like, things like that.
Did you know what a
Learning
fib
that
was at the time? I didn't.
I didn't know what a fib was, but I also learned how to tell little white lies in elementary school, right? Like let me tell you one thing about Canadian kids. They know the loopholes. That's what I felt like. Like they knew stuff at such a young age that we
They were
couldn't
more mature than
fathom.
us. Like they matured faster. I guess because a lot of, like, for me growing up, a lot of the kids that I knew, they were coming from single parent families. So they had to
Could have
fend for
been.
themselves. And
And
a lot
yeah.
of kids, like even us, we had a key wrapped around our neck. So when we left, we'd go
Latchkey
home.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, we used to go home, lock the doors behind us. Are we allowed to play outside? Yes, but you have to be inside at a certain time, that kind of thing. But I think a lot of kids got away with the things that they did when I was young because they were mostly from single parent families. And the ones that weren't, they just took it for all they could.
Yeah. So like from the speaking aspect of it and language barrier and stuff, I also remember like for us, like West Indianly, if something happens at home or your parents are talking about something and you overhear something,
Oh, yeah.
the first thing they would turn around and tell you is don't
Oh,
go
repeat.
outside and do not repeat anything from this
Yep. Do
house.
not repeat.
Exactly. And it's like I was just going to the kitchen and you were talking like what do you but they would always
Yeah, they always tell you.
even up to today. My parents will be talking downstairs in the kitchen, like doing their thing. I'll come down and get a glass of water or something,
Grown
and
woman.
I'll walk by them talking, and then my mom will just automatically try and be like, "Wherever your father and I talking, don't go."
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
like, "Mom, I wasn't even paying attention. I'm just drinking water, like."
I
And then
get
I'm
that a lot.
thinking, yeah, and then I'm thinking that's the whole problem with when young people growing up in Canada that are from a different country and you're continuing to this is my problem with my parents and I've told them, you guys want two different things, right? Oh, be Canadian, but then hey, don't go outside and talk with business here and don't do this. I don't so it's like what do you want me to be, right? Um and it's the same thing, like, I'm just going to touch on this a little bit. Like with my dad's side of the family, they're very religious. They're a Muslim family, right? But here's the thing, they're confusing because one minute it's like, no, we don't do this. But then you see them doing something a
That they
couple of
say
weeks
don't do.
later, and then it confuses me. So I had a conversation with my mom a couple of weeks ago because we were watching something and I said, this doesn't like I love how I grew up. I will always be what I am, but people create confusion to try
No damn
and
reason.
to try and control you. So they think, okay, I'm reading the whatever, the Bible, the whatever, the Torah, the whatever, the Quran. They want you to follow every single word in this book. But then when you see them on the outside, what are they doing? The other day, somebody told me that they were going to a concert and they're fully garbed up, like fully covered garb. And I'm like, where? I thought you guys not supposed to listen to music. Like in my mind, growing up, that's what the people would teach you. The imams, the priests. You're not supposed to really listen and indulge in music. Mind you, my father was in a band growing up, so we have music playing throughout this house no matter what. But people try to confuse the children, right? So like
I think a
even in
lot,
that.
even as an adult, people try to confuse me now with the words I say. And
Yep.
I think that when they look at me, okay, so first of all, um, from a teenage from my teenage years, I'm now speaking better Canadian. Right, I now sound more like a Canadian than I do a Bajan, and
Yep.
so when I would call people on the phone, I remember doing job interviews and stuff. People would talk to me on the phone. My name is Samantha. That doesn't sound like Maisha, Kadisha, whatever. That like there's like this whole series of black names and stuff. So I would sound very Canadian. with the name Samantha, and then I had my my last name at the time, which was Reese. It was not a typical West Indian name either. It's more like a British name. Like
Right.
I had my stepfather's name. His name was Reese, and that's Welsh. And so they would think when they're speaking to me on the phone that I was Canadian, and then I would show up, and then surprise, surprise, I am not a white chick, you know? And so I do remember, though, Newmarket being the place that I had the most jobs throughout my teenage years. I, I,
Mm.
I don't really feel I ever got discriminated. Maybe I did, but I never recognized it being discriminated
Mm.
against in school or working in Newmarket. Now, Newmarket, when I look at it, it is very diverse. But when I first went there, there was like a handful of Black mixed families as well. There was a few
Yeah.
mixed families with kids that were, I hate the word mulatto because it's a bad word, uh,
Yeah.
but interracial kids. And then there were some solid uh, kids from Jamaica that were Black, but probably had white in their history somewhere. I don't know. But I don't think that it was a thing that we were ever, I never felt discriminated against.
Right.
And even that one teacher I was telling you about, uh, I thought she just didn't like me. I never thought about it as her being racist. I just
Yeah.
thought she didn't like me as a child. Maybe I didn't speak up enough or something for her, whatever the reason was. But later on in life, I realized it was probably she just didn't like Black kids and didn't want to teach them. But
So yeah,
uh,
as you yeah
what you have a
as
question?
yeah as you mentioned your experience with like the language and as you got older and it changed. So with me, um, I always had the accent. I don't know, it just always stuck with me, but I know how to turn it on and turn it off. So I remember I was doing a co-op at a headhunting office here in Mississauga, and it was a lot of West Indian people that worked for the warehouses and stuff at the time. And even some of the people in the office were West Indian. So I was working payroll as well as reception. And on Fridays, people would call in and they like say, "Hey, I'm so and so. I can I come in and pick up my check?" So this guy calls in and he gives me his name and I'm going through the files. I'm like, "Yep, your check's
I
ready.
think you
Come
told
on
me this
in."
story.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I was like on the phone, I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Come on in. Your check's ready. Just ask for Faria, which is my first name." And then um, he comes into the office, but to him, it didn't click that I was like a brown girl or different with my name. He didn't think, right?
Mhm.
So as he walks in, he's like, "I'm looking for so and so." And then I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. How can I help you?" And then he's like, "I know you. I know you." He's like, "You don't sound like that." And I'm like, "What do you?" And then when I looked at him, it was my dad's friend.
Ah,
And he's like, "Hey, I know you. I hear you talk before. You don't sound like how you used to be when we outside." And I'm like, "Well, I'm at my job." So
yeah.
and like so it's like
I've gotten
yeah.
accused of trying to sound too white before, and I'm like, it's just how I speak now. I mean, if I get around Bajans, yes, I'm going to speak. I'm the accent comes on, and I'm speaking. I remember when I had gone back home for the first time. I had met up with some people that I knew when I was younger, and even a couple of my siblings, they thought that it was funny the way I speak. And I think a lot of people from back there, they always hear that Canadians say a and all this stuff, and I never thought I said a lot, but I realize I do, not in regular conversations, but I do sound more Canadian now than I ever did before. And I think it's because I've lived so many different places in Canada. I've picked up so many different ways of speaking that is almost natural to me now. Like
Yeah.
on the occasion, I remember I had lost my temper once with my kids, and that Bajan accent kicked in, and I was talking, and I was yelling, and I looked down at my kids, and they're just looking me puzzled, like, "Who are you?" And I think my oldest one said, "Why are you speaking like that?"
That's
I'm like,
hilarious.
okay, because they probably understood nothing of what I just said, and I had just flipped. I think I just like something flipped inside of me, and I got really pissed off about something, which I used to get angry a lot for things stupid things they used to do, but I never lost my temper that bad before, and
Right.
so
So here's speaking of like when you go back home, like
mhm.
when we as West Indians go, here's I'm gonna give you three words that I remember growing up when I would go back to Trinidad that they would crack up laughing whenever I said it. Right. And I didn't notice that my accent was slowly changing in
Changing
regards to these three words. The first one was water.
water,
Yep. Quarter and
water,
bag.
bag.
So yeah, and bag. Water, quarter, and bag. Those were the three words. I remember the
You
first
don't
time
say water.
yeah, we say water, quarter, bag,
Bag.
right? So here I am, like the fourth time I go back to Trinidad, and I'm like, yeah, Grandma, can I have a glass of water? Can I have a glass of water, please? And all my cousins, because we used
What
to
is
stay at
it?
my, yeah, they're like, water. Grandma, can I have a glass of water? And then when we were packing to come back Canada, my uncles, they'd be like, give Risha a bag. She wants a bag.
I see. There's I don't think there's many words that I like. There's some words that I still pronounce like a Bajan here. Like if somebody's talking to me and they're asking me where I'm from, I say Christchurch. They say, okay, now I hear where you're from.
Yeah, because the way you say it.
But like I pronounce my kids give me a hard time with this. If I don't I can't even say diaper. How do you say it?
Okay, so growing up in Trinidad, diaper. But
Oh,
here it's diaper.
no,
Canadians,
no, they don't say I say diaper. They say diaper.
oh
Or
yeah,
I don't know
diaper.
how they say it.
It's
They blend it or somehow.
so the Canadians have the softer, it's diaper. And
Yes,
I
yes,
know
yeah.
in Trinidad we say diaper, diaper.
Diaper. Yeah, I
Yeah.
say diaper. Or like my mom will still say she doesn't say salmon, she says salmon. Or she doesn't say almond, she says
Common.
almond. All right, she doesn't say time,
Oh.
she says time, you know.
You know what
My mom
cracks
wants to
me
pay
up?
attention also.
My dad cracks me up because I think he now does it on purpose because he knows it gets a chuckle out of us. There's certain words where he'll say he still has this West Indian thing where he'll say, yeah, in the week a day. I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
Or he'll say, this is the best one. He'll be like, yeah, Scott is from Ireland. And I'm like,
Yeah. But you know
I'm
what?
like, Daddy, it's Ireland. He's like, yeah, I say that. I said that. And I'm like, no.
I think
Oh, Lord.
I think the best accent to probably make fun of is the Guyanese when they're starting to speak, because they say the words
Oh.
literally how the letters are written mostly.
Listen.
And I, I
Yeah.
I laugh now, but that's how I was when I first came here, and I had a hard time. And
Mhm.
I remember, listen, I remember getting spanked. I wouldn't say spanked. It was really beat. We got lashes for not pronouncing
Yes.
the word properly. I remember in school back home, I got the ruler for not, you know, pronouncing a word properly, because remember we were under
British rule.
British rule, British educational system. So
Hmm.
the way that they pronounce words, the way that we pronounce words, the way that they spell words, or the way that we spell words. It came to Canada, it's the same thing, but it slowly throughout the years it changed. It's more Americanized now, and I refuse. I said, listen, growing up, I got beat as a child to spell the word this way, so I'm spelling it this way in any document. Except I had a battle with one of my bosses one time in one of the companies, one of the that grocery store companies that we were working for.
Oh, okay.
I got in a battle with not our boss,
I know,
because
I know.
she was very good on her English, and her mom was a school teacher and stuff. But uh, they did not want me to spell the way that they didn't want me. They wanted me to use American spelling
Oh, okay.
for the documents I wrote. I mean, I eventually caved in. I said, okay, it's my job. If they're going to keep giving me hassling me about it, then I will do it. But they wanted me to in writing. But these letters I was doing was going to Canadians, so I didn't
Mhm.
understand why they wanted me to use American spelling. And
Right.
Canadian dictionaries had conformed to American way of spelling too. Right? There's only a few
Oh,
words that are still spelt the same as how the British would spell them.
yeah.
That's a hard time, but yeah. So I know we don't have much time left. Let's say we got 10 minutes left. And
Yeah.
so when you were growing up, okay, we have West Indian parents. They're very strict. They force you to, first of all, the meals that we used to cook. I still grew up in a house where we ate West Indian food, but we
Yes.
also had to incorporate, or my mom was also incorporating Canadian food with ours as well. But we always had, especially when my grandmother came to live with us because she was doing all the cooking, we were eating West Indian food all the time.
Yeah.
So we had our meat, our starch, our vegetables, just like the Canadians would, but we didn't just have meat. We had meat upon provisions.
Oh
Like
my God. Yeah.
we, we had this conversation before. We had not just beans, we had edos, we had dasheen, Christophine, we had all those things, especially in
Oh my
soup,
gosh.
in our soup.
Yes.
I cannot
Yes.
say that there's any better soup than a West Indian soup, whether it's from
Correct.
Jamaica,
Correct.
whether it's from Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados. If it's West Indian, it's a good soup. If it is not
Exactly.
West Indian, it's a bland soup.
Thank you very much. Like I agree. Like when we started to go to like elementary school fully, when we moved to Mississauga, I remember sometimes sometimes when my grandma started living with us, I would open my mommy, she bought these lunch boxes for us that you would open and they were like the
Apple
primary
glass and
colors. Yeah. And they had all the stuff in them. And I would open my lunch box and I'd have like callaloo and rice.
yeah.
And this kid sitting beside me, he was Portuguese and his name was George Raposo. I remember he used to have these subs with beans and Doritos, and I'm eating callaloo and rice, and everyone's looking at my lunch like, "What is that? What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" But as a kid, it didn't bother me. You know when it bothered me? When I started to go to high school, and like my mom would give me roti and like callaloo or roti and
Right, that's the best
pumpkin,
time.
and they would give me money to buy food at school too. But my mom said, if you don't want to buy food at school, if you want to save your money to go to the mall at the end of the week, eat what mom gives you. I remember the one Canadian lunch my mom used to give us was she would take the Wonder Bread and she would boil the wieners. She would cut it up, put it on the bread,
And roll
put
it.
ketchup, cut and then cut it in like a triangle, put that in the lunchbox, and then like believe it or not, we coming to Canada, we didn't know because we eat halal and veggie, our household. So we didn't know the Lunchables were like pork.
Ah,
So we would go to Nob Hill Farms and my parents would buy a
never
bunch
read
of
the
that.
package.
Yeah. So because my dad, I think my parents assumed that it
Everything
was
was,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. They didn't know. Right. And like back home too, remember in the Caribbean, when you go to buy chicken, you go buy a man on his
Fresh
farm.
chicken. Yep, fresh
Yeah,
chicken.
and you say, listen, I want
But
that chicken.
now they don't. They buy it in the grocery stores now. But I remember my grandmother. I
Yeah,
used to go with her to pick up a fresh chicken.
yeah.
Uh,
Chicken, goat, anything. You go by the farm, you go by the next door neighbor who has duck in his backyard, who's minding the duck, and you say, okay, I need a duck for tomorrow to cook for dinner. So you knew where the stuff was coming from, right? When we got here now, everything's processed, everything's
package.
packaged, everything's so they didn't know, and they would used to give us Lunchables sometimes until I think my grandpa came to Canada.
And
He
read
never
the
wanted to
package.
come. Yeah, he never wanted to come, but my grandma made him come. And he went grocery shopping, and my dad was putting it in the cart. And my grandpa goes, "You know that's meat in the package, right?" And then my dad goes, "Yeah, but they eat it for lunch." And then my grandpa was looking at it, and that's when he said, "You shouldn't
Pork.
be. Yeah, this is pork. We can't. You can't eat this." So that was a funny thing too, like the food. And then one time in high school, my grandma made roti, and like she put
I would have died for roti. And like I'm in high school, I ate a lot of West Indian food because I used to buy lunch from outside the
yeah,
school.
but
But elementary school, it was always hot dogs, pizza. I got to tell you a story about pizza. When I first
mm,
came here, my parents used to order pizza. I remember it was Pizzaville Pizza.
oh God.
And the first time I saw it, to me, it looked like throw up on bread.
Ew.
I would not eat that thing worth anything. And my mom would eat it and then give me the crust, and that's what I would eat for dinner because I refused to eat pizza. I just when I looked at what was on it, it just looked like something that I chewed up and spit back out on top of bread.
Now, did you used to eat pizza in Barbados?
No, never knew what pizza was until I came here.
Oh, okay. See, we had like
Good
Mario's
error
pizza.
when I came here from you. I got to tell you that first.
Yeah, but like in Trinidad, we had Mario's Pizza, right? Growing up, it was the only pizza place at the time. And on like a Friday after church or whatever, one of our uncles, he would pass by all the kids in the village and we would all go and they buy pizzas upon pizzas and like they put,
What year was that? In the 80s?
yeah, that was in the 80s.
Okay. So I came a decade earlier.
Yeah.
And the only thing we knew that was in Barbados, that was in Canada, was Kentucky Fried Chicken. That was it.
So the other thing with pizza, what we used to do differently in Trinidad is we would actually put ketchup, mustard, and pepper sauce on the pizza and then eat it. Like that was our thing, and especially the pepper sauce. That's what we even now to this day. If like my parents order pizza at the house, I'm getting out the pepper sauce and the ketchup, and I'm adding
how I started eating pizza. I went to a friend's birthday party and they had just cheese pizza, and that's how I started eating pizza.
I like cheese pizza.
Then I got the pepperoni on the pizza. Now I could eat, like, my favorite pizza now is spinach and cheese because I like
the feta.
Feta cheese and spinach. But I'm not a fan of pizza still.
Right.
But I could eat a pizza with everything on it now and not feel like I'm sick. But when I was younger, I used to feel sick. And I'll tell you something else, Rhea. So in traveling, when I first came here, right, I got sick on the plane flight here when the plane was landing. When they said that, you know, that it was Air Canada, so the plane was like this, and my stomach was constantly coming up like this. So anytime they put me in the back seat of a car to drive, a little bump hit, a little swerve, a little hill down. Bleh, I was like Penny from South Park.
Motion sickness. But you know what?
But I never got motion sickness on a boat. It was simply in the car, and not now on a plane. I don't get motion sickness, but at the time, yes, I used to get sick all the time. So they used to have to travel with bags for me,
like barf bags.
Yeah. Barf bags. And then the other thing was I never, because I stopped speaking for a while, and I was always afraid to say something because of the type of parents I had. And so if I had to pee, I waited till the very last minute to tell them I had to pee. So I used to pee myself a lot. I pee the car. I get out the car, I start to run, pee, trickle.
It's how many times have you ever got left in a store? As a kid, let me tell you, when we used to live, my parents were not joking.
I got kicked out my car once.
So, my nephew let me tell you. So when we first moved here and we were living down Gladstone, right? We would go to Dufferin Mall and, okay, listen, the only mall we had in Trinidad at the time was Gulf City and maybe like one or two tinier malls, right? So when we came to Canada and we go big Dufferin Mall with escalator and what's the one without the stairs?
It's the escalator too. It's the
movator, whatever it's called, right? Man, me and my brother were like in heaven, going up and down, up and down, up and down. And my parents were walking around. This used to be Woolco at the time at Dufferin Mall. Yeah. My parents would be walking around Woolco and they'd be like, come on, hurry up, let's go. We're leaving this area. Come on, go. And then my parents used to stand up and they used to say, listen, I'm moving from here, and if you get a left, you get a left. A few times they said it.
You can't do that in Canada.
No. A few times they said it, and I guess we just kept egging them on till one day We went to Dufferin Mall. It was just me, my mom, and my grandma. We went into Dufferin Mall, and my mom's looking for like winter clothes for us at the time. It was like springtime, but you know the sales they had. So as my mom's looking through the racks, I'm running in and out of the racks, hiding in the clothes. My dad comes to pick up my mom and my grandma, and my mom kept telling me, "You better not do that, because if I don't see you and we leave, you will stay here." I didn't believe her. Next thing you know, I don't hear her for like a good 5 minutes. So I come out of the clothes rack and I look around, and my mom and my grandma are gone. My dad was outside in the parking lot waiting for them.
Yeah.
So then now I start crying buckets of water, man. I start screaming and crying. Then my mom, I could see the window from Wolco. I saw her standing outside, like with her arms crossed. And she's just like shaking her head. She's like, and you could see her mouthing, "When we get home, when we get home."
Oh, that was yeah. Do you remember
Yo.
that cartoon, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home?
Oh my goodness, no.
I used to hear that a lot. Wait till
Mhm.
your father gets home. That's when we
Yeah,
used to get
yeah.
our little ass whoop.
Well, hey, it was funny because I think for my dad, he would never like beat me or anything. My dad was very soft on me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a daddy's girl. I'm like, that's my best friend. But my mom would threaten me with that all the time. And I like, as I got older and I knew my relationship with my dad, I'd just be like, okay, when he gets home then. And then my mom would get so mad at my dad because he'd be like, "Oh, but she's the youngest and it's okay." And he'd be like, "It's okay, just don't do it again." And my mom would get so upset with him, and she'd be like, this is why.
Well, you're lucky because I think it's because of your religion that you're saved. Most West Indian kids got whooped. They got the belt. They got anything that the parent could pick up. Coming to Canada, I was not um, safe from that either. I
I
well, I
Yeah,
the
I
belt
wasn't
was the
safe
main
from it.
thing. The belt was the main thing my parents would whoop my ass with. Mostly my father, my stepfather, but there's times where I was. My mom used to say I was feeling my britches when I was a teen, and I just I was at a point where enough is enough, and so I kind of rebelled a little bit. And mind you, they may not agree with me on this, but I was a good kid. I mean, I
Oh,
used to do some things sometimes, but on the most part, I was a good kid. I followed rules. I didn't swear and all that stuff.
yeah.
Meanwhile, my sister was swearing. Sorry, had to call you out on that. You were swearing, I wasn't. And there came a point that I did start swearing, but I think it was in my household, and I think I have to tell my parents this at some point that I'm writing a book on my life growing up.
That's a good idea.
If they're listening, sorry, I'll talk to you about it later. But it's a book about my perspective of my life growing up to now, and all the things that happened to me, all the adventures and all the unfortunate events and things like that. So I think that for me, it was. I had I think after my sister, who's 10 years younger than me, was born. She's the first Canadian born here.
Oh, wow.
Um, when she was born, I think my parents slowly came around. By the time I was 18, I was like out of the house. So I think their perspective on how well, actually, I shouldn't even say that because I can honestly say there was three of us in the house, three girls. I was the oldest, but I was not my stepdad's child. My sister, who was a year younger than me, who came to Canada with my mom and stuff, she was closer to my parents because she knew them from birth, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. And then my sister, who's 10 years younger than me. So my sister, who's 10 years younger than me, she was like the new age Canadian. Let's say that. She was also, um, I think my stepdad thought of her as his mom reincarnated. This is my opinion, by the way. This is my
Wow.
opinion. And so she was like a golden child. Nothing could be done to her. Nothing could be like can't touch her or nothing like that. So I think that when it came to discipline, I got disciplined a lot for things that my sister and my cousin done because I did grow up closely with my cousin as well for a good part. Um, Even when we left Toronto and moved to Newmarket, my cousin used to come and visit a lot, spend summers with us and stuff. So I got the brunt of the disciplinary or the discipline from them based on my sister and my cousin. And I don't know why, and this is a whole other story altogether, but just putting it out there why they were spared, I was not. And so I had a lot of resentment, and this is why I left home early. But I think that and I forgot where I was going with this, but just the way that we were growing up with the West Indian mentality of hit first, ask later. And your parents would hit you for doing something, even if they found out that it wasn't you. They would not say sorry. It's
Yeah,
not it
that's
was
very true.
not in a West Indian's parents' vocabulary to say sorry to a child for disciplining them for something that they didn't do, and make amends with that. So I think there's a lot of things to go back and probably I don't want to rehash anything, but it will come out when I finish my writings
So
and stuff
like
like that.
I was never safe from discipline. I think my mom is the one who did most of it. My dad did discipline me, but not the way my mom
Did
would have liked. So she was the harsh one, right? Whereas my dad was a
Miss
little
you
bit
should
easier
know.
on, yeah, he was a little bit easier on me. But my mom was very easy on my brother. And there was a point in time from 14 to maybe 26 where I and my mom were like two battle axes.
Oh,
And
I
it
think
was
it's always an
so
issue with the girls and their moms.
right. And it was so detrimental to me in a sense. There were things that happened throughout that time frame. I think they had to happen. Things had to be said, or else at this point in my life, I think it would just be worse, right?
Yeah,
So I get that these things had to happen and I had to go through them, but it just it made certain things much more difficult. At one point, literally just before we met, like maybe a year or two before I met you, there was a point in time where I packed and I was like to my dad, I'm leaving now, move out of my way. My dad got really loud and he was like, he basically said, no one's leaving this house. And my parents would never, never, never consider therapy, like counseling therapy, whatever. And at that point, my dad had to throw his hands up and said, we're going to family therapy. And we did. And I don't know why. That's something we have to talk about in the future. Why is it that West Indian families are so averse to counseling, family therapy,
I
or
don't.
getting help?
I
You
think
know?
it's the generation. I don't think it's just West Indians because I've spoken to a lot of people like Chinese people, Vietnamese people. They never believe. The only people that really I know that believe in therapy were Canadians and American, like grew up here.
But it's not a generational thing. I think it's just a cultural thing too. Because you see this whole thing about don't talk our business when you go on the road. Because people think it's so taboo. Okay, like let's say I'm going through a problem in my life, like my kid is cussing up a storm and embarrassing me. I don't
Mhm.
want people outside. Their whole
I'm
way
still
of
like that though. I'm
yep,
still
so
like that.
their whole way of dealing with it is don't let other people know we're going through this. But then if we're going through it and someone else is going through it and you don't know, how can you support one another? Right?
Yeah,
How can you figure it out together? Like I'm still of the thought that it takes a village to raise a kid because
yeah.
I've seen it with
And
my
they
own
do
two
believe that it
eyes.
takes a village to raise a kid, but at the same time, they want to keep the. And I think a lot of West Indian, from not just my generation, but the generations before me,
Mhm.
everything was kept inside behind those walls.
Yeah.
So if mommy beat daddy or daddy beat mommy or the kids used to get beat, who if anybody knew about it, if the neighbor knew about it, the neighbor said nothing because it's their business, right?
Right, right.
If
And
you
that's
knew
where,
was getting
yeah, that's where I
dropped and
find that
beat,
it's a little problematic. But that's something, a topic for another
yeah,
day. But I just remember growing up that like these were the, like, and it's difficult to even I guess, but like funny things that happened to me. I remember my first time seeing a roller coaster as a teenager. I was like, what the heck? You're supposed to get on that and like trust that you're not gonna die. Like I remember what was it? My first time skating, ice skating. Girl, I fell so many times. I remember my parents were like, "Yep, we're going to ice skating lessons." I was like, "Hell no." Like I've tried it. It's good. The ice can stay
you know
right where it
what?
is.
It's really funny because when I first came here, we went to Ontario Place. There was this little tiny roller coaster there that I was always. I don't. I want to say I was a daredevil, but I was always willing to try something new. So
Mhm.
roller coasters, speedboats, whatever it is, put me on it. I will try it. I mean,
Wow.
I'm a kid that used to climb trees and jump from tree to
Yes.
tree, right?
I used to do that, yeah.
So, and I would be one of those kids that would be on a. I remember back home, some of the kids used to make go karts out of like box. What do you call them? Like the milk boxes, the cartons,
Oh,
the wooden
okay, yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you just sit inside, put the wheels on, and there's no real steering or anything like that. So you're on the back, you're on the top, you're on the wherever you are, and you're just going, and you crash to stop, or you go up a hill and come back
Yep.
down to stop. So I was the kid that used to do that. So I think that roller coasters and stuff, it was never any question that I was going to get on one.
Mm.
Even to this day, I joined cadets and I've been up in a glider, 2 engine plane. The only thing I haven't done was jump out a plane, which is still on my bucket list.
Whoa, that's cool. So my brother was a cadet actually. So he got to experience all that. He
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, even
Mm.
I've been shooting. We've done cadet war games. We've been up in Barrie, baseboard in Trenton. We
Yeah.
like I did a lot. I did a lot. I was in a lot of extracurricular activities, and I wish for myself. Growing up, I mean, my kids grew up mainly as me as their only parent. The father was
Mhm.
around, so I didn't have the ability to put my kids in all of that stuff. But I had the opportunity. My parents made the effort to make sure I was in figure skating, I was in gymnastics, I was in drum corps. I traveled all over Canada and United States. Um,
Whoa, wow, yeah.
I competed. You know, I'm most of friends on my Facebook. I shouldn't say most of friends. A lot of friends on my Facebook is from those times in my life where I had the opportunity to do those things. I mean, I had a lot of opportunity as a child, and I think my mom explained to me one time that the reason she brought me to Canada was for me to have a better life and have these type of opportunities. But you know, at the time, I was a sour kid. I didn't like my home life. I would prefer probably to live on the street rather than to go home to what I was having to deal with. And, you know, it took a lot for me to come around. It took a lot for me to forgive and get over the things that didn't make me happy in life growing up here
Yeah.
in Canada because I had these West Indian parents. I think
Yeah.
I remember a friend of my mom was telling me she wanted to adopt me, and it was told. I remember the night that she's like, "Just give her to me, Maria. I'll adopt her," and all of that stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I really want to be adopted because I would have done anything to get out." Right?
Yeah. I was kind of like the same where, but mine was kind of reverse. My parents kind of my brother was able to experience a lot of things. I wasn't. Um
He was older,
I was
right?
not he's not that much older, but it wasn't even the age thing.
It was the cultural thing, men and
It
women.
was just I think they were so you're a girl. So my dad was very protective of me, I'm not going to lie, which
Cultural or religious?
I think it's both. I think it's both cultural and religious.
Mhm.
So I didn't get to experience a lot until I was like 13, 14 years old. First time going to Wonderland, first time doing a lot of things, right? Yes, we were in like swimming and ice skating. I hated ice skating, but just normal activities that you think kids would go to. The only one place that we would go to almost every year because family would come and visit was the annual yearly trip to Niagara Falls. Like that used to piss me off after like I like remember at like 15, whenever my parents would be like, yeah, we're going to Niagara Falls. We're going to show them. I'm like, no, yeah, I'm not going. I was like so over it at like 15, 16. I was like, can we go somewhere different? Like, I want to see something else. You know, I was probably 17 when I first went to African Lion Safari, or that I could remember. That I could remember. We probably went to African Lion Safari when I was like 6 when we first moved here, but I couldn't remember it. It was, you know, but like 17 years old, the first time I'm actually remembering it, seeing it, and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of things that it's funny when people talk to me about stuff, I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. What is that? Like, and they'd be like, what? Like, you've never seen this or you've never done Blue Mountain. I've been there once during the day just to like look at the shops and then we left. Like a lot of people talk about their vacation there or their stay there or the activities they did there. I never got to experience these things. And
So,
so
yeah, I did. Blue
Mhm.
Mountain, I remember we went to Blue Mountain a couple times, but I remember the one time we did go, the first time I went to Blue Mountain, we got to go on the big hill slide. We went in, me and my
Mm.
sister was able to go into the caves, like climb into the cave with the stalagmites and stalactites. And my cousin, she was a little bit on the unfit side. I'm not going to say, I'm just say she was a little less fit than we were, and so
Yeah.
she couldn't really go down in there. But these are like those kind of experiences are like lifetime. We took a trip out east one time, all the way to PEI. It was like
Ooh.
a camping trip. It was a bunch like my it was extended family. You know, my mom, dad, sisters, my cousin, my grandfather, his wife, and we took a
Yes.
trip out there. And I mean, these are we experienced it. I never went out west, which I've always wanted to do. If I went out west, I probably would have disappeared, honestly, because I feel like I want to live out west.
Yeah,
But
Victoria is beautiful. I seen pictures, but yeah, like all these experiences that you've had, we've never had them. We have family that lived in PEI for the longest time.
oh yeah.
Never gone, never gone, never gone. It's my dad's cousin. They talk on the phone all the time. They meet once in a while in Trinidad, and it's just like we wouldn't even have to pay for a place to stay, just drive down. But no, we never went. I think my parents come from this like they were young, but they were old. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like they were young but old at the same time. Like, oh, that's a lot of driving, or oh, that's a. But these are opportunities that you're missing to build and share with your children as they're younger, things that they can hold on to in the future. And like, God forbid something happens to your parents, you have these beautiful memories. Oh yeah, my parents took us there. We saw this, we saw that. Not that I'm saying I don't have memories of them, but we never really traveled that much. In terms of all of this, right? Like we went to Chicago to see my mom's cousin once because like her daughter was getting married. We never went back. I've been to New York a few times, right? But like let me tell you, this is how we go to New York. Imagine you've never been to New York in your life. You go to New York, you want to see Manhattan in Times Square. Have I ever seen it? And I've been to New York like 6 times. So the next time I go, I'm not going to stay by my family. They can kiss my rear end
Well, I'll plan a
because
trip to New York with you because every time I've been to New York, I have never been to Times Square. I've never been,
yeah,
well, the Empire State Building's gone now. No, it's not. The Twin Towers are gone.
Twin Towers, yes.
So anytime I went to New York, and I've been to New York many, many times. I've been to Queens, I've been to the Bronx, I've been to Staten Island, I've been to what's the other island?
Long Island.
Long Island. My ex-husband's sister was on Long Island. We went there. I've been to Boston. Like I can't even count how many times I've been to Boston. Um,
Ooh.
through Pennsylvania, Washington.
Yeah.
I've been Detroit. I don't ever want to go back to Detroit, but I will drive through it. in
Yeah.
the daylight.
See, so like it's so funny. You go to New York, you don't even see Manhattan or Times Square. And this is why I say now, whenever I travel, it's not going to be about seeing family. It's going to
Yeah,
be about doing what I want to do and
what
seeing
you
what I
want to
want
do.
to see.
And that's
Because
the
it
thing
just
too.
gets, like, and the thing is, when family comes here, my dad
They
will take
expect
them
you to
to,
take them everywhere.
yeah, my dad takes his family to the CN Tower, the aquarium, the Niagara Falls. But when you go there, it's like they don't show you the same respect or the same care.
That I think it's a money thing too. They expect that because you're here, you're making loads and loads of money because you're Canadian now. You have a Canadian great job and all this. They don't know the struggle that you have here.
No, it's the
That's
same
one thing.
struggle. It's
But
yeah.
they think that you're living this big fabulous life up here, and they don't know how hard you have to work for your money too. When I
Exactly.
know when I go back home, the very first time I went back home as adults, I left my kids here with their dad, and I went back, and I went to visit my dad, who treated me like royalty when I was down there, my biological father. Um, and he took me to a few places that I haven't seen since I was a kid, and a couple places he always like took me out for dinner and stuff like that. But he had his faults too. But it was not until I was an adult that I met most of my siblings from back there. I have many siblings. I am in contact with most of them, but I keep we keep talking about we want to get together, but I don't want to go back home, and I don't want to just do. I want to do the tourist thing. I want to experience what tourists experience when they go back. I know the island. I know like where I want to go and stuff like
Exactly.
that, but I don't want to. I always say I'm not going to tell anybody when I go back home, and I usually tell people the day I'm traveling or the day I'm landing.
Yeah,
Because I don't really know if I want to. I want time to myself first. I want to be able to experience what I want to experience, and I always end up getting stuck doing things family want to do and not, do things I want to do.
that's exactly what happens to us when we go back to Trinidad. My mom tries to tell my dad, don't tell people when we're coming. Just surprise them and let's do our own thing. So
Yeah,
now, the last time I went was around my birthday time in no, two times ago. I went around my birthday time in April. And one of my friends who still lives there, she decided we're not going to stay in Trinidad. We're going to go to Tobago, which is our sister island.
yeah.
So I and her, we took off from Trinidad and we went to Tobago for 4 days for my birthday. And I kid you not, we were on the beach every morning. Then we would go and shower. We'd go and have breakfast in the hotel or somewhere else.
Hmm.
After breakfast, we'd come back in the hotel room, take a little snoozer nap because of the hot sun, and then we'd go back down to the beach. After that, then we'd come back up, shower, and we'd go to dinner at like one of the fancy restaurants on the island.
Yeah,
Every day we did something like different. We went and
and
we toured around the island, like the forts and the hospital there is so different. So like even checking out those things was really, really nice. That's what I want to do the next time I go. I don't want to go just to Trinidad and just sit at my aunt's house and just
right.
no, I want to do stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I want to go to different places too. Like, I want to go to the Maldives, and I want to go to Thailand is on my list somewhere down there. But I want to go to different places to experience different cultures because I know what my culture is like. And yeah, the other places might be hot as well, but I don't think because they're hot and they're tropical, they're the exact same as where I'm from. And
Yeah.
that's what I want to experience, but I'm always guilted into going back. Like, I have to go back now because there's so many family things that have happened since COVID. And so I have things that I have to check off a list. I have a checklist of things I have to do to go back home, or like when I go back home. And that's what I want to get away from. I don't want to go
Mhm.
back home and have to go through a bunch of things. I want to be an actual tourist. I
Mhm.
want to experience what tourists experience. So, I mean, I love my home. I love where I'm from. I will never forget it. I will never I will always love it. Canada is someplace I've grown to appreciate. The luxuries here and so forth. Uh, I can't say that the education that I got here was what I wanted. I think had I been back home, my education would have been better. I remember
I
once
agree. I
I asked
agree.
my mom to send me to a private school because I was going to an all girls school back there, and
Oh gosh.
I do agree that girls should be separated from boys when they're going to school. But I mean that's my opinion, right? Even I had a great time in high school. High school was probably one of the best times of my life, but
Right.
I don't think that I should have been going to school with boys at the time. I think I should have been going to school with girls. I should have been focusing on what I could do for my future rather than, being distracted by boys and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and that's just my
Oh.
opinion. Not everybody has the same opinion. I can never understand. Listen,
Yeah.
in the West Indies, they give you lunch. You do have to do a monthly fee for your lunches, but they give
Mhm.
you hot meals. They give you stew. They give you rice and peas and chicken, and the kids get a good hot meal when they
Yes.
are back home. I came to Canada. I see kids eating sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly. What is bologna and mustard?
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Ham and cheese. Oh my
Ham and
God.
cheese, and I never ever saw a lunch area. Then I to this day, the schools that they make don't have primary schools do not have cafeterias.
Yes. Primary schools don't. I know
High
junior
schools do,
highs.
junior high do, and high schools do, but it makes no sense to me why a primary school would not have a cafeteria.
You want to know why?
Teachers don't want to watch the kids.
Not only that, okay, so as coming from a teaching background, the standpoint, now I think we went off a little bit topic and we're kind of going late, but just
Yes, you are.
quickly, a rundown of from a teaching standpoint. Remember, having a cafeteria with all these kids in it, and these are kids from differing ages that some of them aren't even capable. Like, remember, they're regulating and learning how to be as elementary school students. So let's say you have a kindergartner, let's say it's kindergarten to grade 3 has lunch first period, right? Imagine all these kids in one big room, right? Going through the lunch line. They can't, you when you give children at this young age choice, they get confused. And then it's like they want everything. So first of
It's
all,
not a choice. If they had it, it doesn't have to be a choice. They have one specific meal today, and every kid gets that same meal, just like in jail. Push your lunch tray along, mashed
yeah.
potatoes, whatever. Go eat. Go sit down and eat.
So
I understand
yeah,
where from a
yeah.
grade from junior kindergarten to grade two,
Developmentally, they're
grade
not ready
two
and
even,
prepared
but
to do those things on their own yet, right? And
that's what school's for. It's supposed to teach them this stuff, and school is lacking in the things that they teach them sometimes.
so with honestly, you
I
also have
went
to
to
think of
school.
it. You
I
also
started
have to
school
think
when
of
I
it
was
as
3. I was in a cafeteria eating, obeying the rules, sitting down at a table with my classmates and eating the lunch that was served at that time. 3, 4, 5, 6.
right. So private schools are run a little bit differently, whereas in public, it's they're two separate things, right? I understand that in your private school at 3, that's what they were teaching you to do. But in public schools, listen, from
We'll save it for another topic. We'll save it for another time.
yeah, because it's a lot different from a public school standpoint. Because in public school, remember, you have differing religions, you have different things. You can't just serve one meal and
Now,
then make the kids
yes,
you eat
I
that,
like where
right?
like how we are in today's
Yeah.
world. Yes, there's so many different religions that you have to account for what people can eat, and now there's so many allergies and all that. So yeah, that's a big topic that we can
But
discuss
you're right.
time.
At 4, I used to teach a toddler room, right? A
Yeah,
toddler room. So 3 to 5. And I will tell you, in our room, we had the mini milk jugs on each table. There was like 3 or 4 tables. They would sit for lunch and snack, and they would have to pour their own milk in my room, right? In my toddler room. We would put the lunches on the table. They would have to pick what they want, like okay, I want bread or pita. Okay, I'll take the pita. Do I want carrots or do I want cucumber? Okay, I'll take the cucumber. They would have to pick and do it themselves. If they ask for help, we can help, but we would put it out. Okay, guys, lunchtime, snack time. Let's sit at the table. They would do it themselves. And this is a public environment, but that's because I think like you, right? Like, so me personally, I agree with you, but in a standpoint of just from the sector, it's a little different. But yeah. Anyways, girl, listen.
So I appreciate the conversation because it's been great. I don't know how many we didn't get around to telling a lot of our more funnier experiences because we got caught up in the culture itself, but we'll come back and we'll talk about it again. We'll do a food series or something because this is how we started talking at work with our food and having jokes and laughs with our food. So we will come back. I appreciate everybody who is watching. Don't just like, subscribe so we can get our channel up and running to full potential. Ria, if you want to stick around, I wanted to have another conversation with you. But thank you everyone for listening. Ria, you've been awesome like normal.
Thank you. Always. You as well. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to be back today. And we gave you guys a little bit more time because you missed me last time.
Okay. See you all next Sunday, 7 p.m.
That's right.